Hey bike farmers, thanks for clicking in. If you're anything like a large percentage of my customers, you've got bikes just like this hanging up in your garage. They've got some squishy tires on them. The brakes don't feel real even and there's a little bit of grunge in the system. Last time you rode it, there was some problems with the shifting maybe. You just need a basic bicycle tune-up. Now these Trek FX series hybrids are my absolute favorite bikes to work on. They're some of the best bikes ever built in my opinion. They've got rim brakes, 3x8 drivetrains, some basic aluminum wheels. All the parts on these bikes are decent quality. They're appropriate for the bike. I just don't see them cutting a lot of corners. This is a really good era. They're out there, and if you can get your hands on one, most of the time you'll get them before they've even seen their first tune-up, and there's going to be a few things wrong with it. You tune them up once, and they're working really good for a couple of years. You tune them up twice and they're perfect forever. All you got to do is replace the parts that wear out. Brake pads, tires, chains, that sort of thing. This one's seeing its first tune-up. Based on the tire pressure, I think it's been sitting about a year, maybe hanging up in a garage. Probably an attached garage. It's pretty clean. This is going to be a basic bicycle tune-up. There's exactly 3 steps to my tune-up process: cleaning, lubing, and adjusting. This bike happens to require a little bit from each step, so it's a perfect example of what you can do every year when you pull your bike down and get it ready to ride. So sit back, relax, and let me show you how it's done. Okay, so one of the very first things I do when I start working on a bike is I click the derailleurs both down. I click the small buttons on both shifters so the derailleurs both get to their most relaxed points, so small and small. Then the next step, I disconnect the rear brake. That opens up the brakes so the tires can get through. I'm going to do the same thing to the front here. Then per the usual, I'm going to pop both wheels off the bike. Now I understand that not everybody has a work stand. You don't necessarily need a work stand, it certainly helps. You can do this with the wheels on for most bikes. Truing the wheels in the stand and cleaning the wheels in the stand is a nice thing to do, but it's not necessary. But I like to take the wheels off because this is when it's easiest to clean the frame. And I use Behold furniture polish, and I just spray it on the frame, all over. Then I have this moderately clean rag. And I just start wiping, and I go through and I wipe every square millimeter of the frame that I can get at relatively easily. Hey bike farmers, I just wanted to take this lull in the action to let you know how much I appreciate that you've clicked in to watch this video. Now that I've been at it a little bit, I'm starting to learn why everybody's always asking for more. The AdSense money is just barely enough to make it worth starting a channel. If I want to sustain this for the long term, I'm going to need everyone's help. Now don't get me wrong, your attention is enough. Don't feel obligated to give more, but I've tried to make it as easy as possible. You can always click the super thanks, that's the heart with the $ in the middle of it, or consider a monthly membership. The monthly membership will give you a little star next to your name, and if you have any questions, you can ask them in the comments. I'll see the star, and when I see it, I'll definitely give you an answer. You'll also have access to a little more behind the scenes action that non-members can't see. With all that said, thank you so much, and let's get back to some bikes. Oh, dropped her egg. This is just, you know, it's better to have a truing stand, and I think it's easier to work on wheels when you got it up in the stand. But a lot of bikes, you don't really need to true the wheels. They can all benefit from a little bit of a touch-up, and it's a good way to get a really close look at things. But most of the time, you can just do it in the bike using your brake pads as kind of a guide to see how wavy things are. You can touch things up. But again, I'm just using the Behold furniture polish. Yep, I'm spraying it right on the rims, right on the braking surface. I probably got it all over the brake pads. It doesn't matter, folks. And I like to wipe every single spoke. I think that cleaning stainless steel spokes like this and just kicking the dust off of them, especially when you get the bike in the sun, all that reflection makes it look like a new bike. Now this is a customer bike. They're paying for this tune-up. And so I do like, you know, I mean, it's an aesthetic thing. You know, I want them to get the bike back and have kind of a little bit of a wow factor. So this is wow factor stuff. You know, it's cleaning, lubing, and then adjusting. And we do that for a reason. I mean, sometimes you can just, like with a chain, I think you can just spray some lube on it and it kind of cleans and lubes. But for the most part, like with cables and, you know, if you clean it first, then you're starting with a blank slate. And then when you re-lube it, you know, everything's moving, you know, friction-free in an equilibrium. So that's when the adjustment makes sense. If you start adjusting things and then do the cleaning and lubing, you're gonna have to readjust everything at the end. So there's the cleaning. That wheel is cleaned. And I'm looking at using my truing stand here, which these guys kind of act as just like your brake pads would if you leave it on your bike. You can flip your bike upside down or something. And I'm just seeing like one little spot here where things just aren't quite just exactly perfect. Really not a big deal at all. But just in case somebody checks my work. And I just repeat that process with the front wheel then. Just kind of go through. Hit it with a little bit of polish. Hey bike farmers, a quick note. If you're looking to get serious about fixing bikes at home, look no further than the Park Tool AK5 toolkit. I have an affiliate link in the description. This kit provides all the basic tools you'll need to tune up just about any of the bikes that you see on this channel. It also comes with the Big Blue Book of Bicycle Repair written by Calvin over at Park Tool. Also in the description are affiliate links for all the basic things that I use. The grease, the degreaser, the one step, the Dawn Powerwash, Behold. If you see anything else that I don't already have a link for, let me know in the comments so I can add it. I hope these affiliate links will help encourage you to take this on as a hobby or even start flipping bikes for a living like I do. I think I just finished up this wheel. So one of the nice things about these older bikes is you can get at all of the cables. Everything's on the outside with these cable stops. A lot of newer bikes, everything's internally routed. Sometimes there's a piece of housing all the way from the levers back. Theoretically, that's good because it's a closed system, but I like these systems where you can get access to the cables and lube them every once in a while. So when you have the wheel off, it's super easy. You just push the derailleur in like that. That creates enough slack in that cable that you can just pop the cable out of its stop. And then you get access to this piece of housing, which if you lubricate this little loop, that's the #1 thing you can do to make your shifting feel crispy and clean again. But I'm just gonna leave it disconnected for now and lube the rest of the cables. I can show you a little bit of a trick for the front, is if you shift up into the big ring, and you can do this in the back too when the wheel's on, get it up into the big one without pedaling. You click the other lever and that will loosen the cable enough. You can just slide it out there. And with the rear wheel off and the brake disconnected, you can take that one out of its home. And this one too. I use Triflow. I think any good bicycle lube will work for this. But you get all your cables disconnected and then you can just go through, and I just put a couple of drops on the cables where the housing goes. I drop a little down here with the cable guide under the bike. I guess I already did this one. Do it again for good measure. And we'll grab this front piece of housing, pull it out of the shifter. Just a couple drops, that's all you need. Work it. And we'll put a couple drops underneath the cable guide. Okay, do this rear brake. Now the brake cables, this bike was not lubricated at assembly, I can tell. And so it was the brake cables, both had, I could feel the corrosion on the inside. There was extra friction, so it'd be impossible to get snappy brakes on this bike. And we like our brakes snappy. So I pull this one and yeah, it's bone dry. It kind of gets like, maybe it's like a wax. Maybe there was some lube at some point and it just dried out. But I do think it's just a little bit of corrosion or gunk that kind of builds up. Even in the dry garages, Okay, and then I kind of hold the noodle back here with one hand and squeeze the lever. And actually, I'm gonna add a little more lube right here where the noodle goes into the brake. You don't wanna forget to lube your noodle, if you know what I'm saying. And then the trickiest one is always the front brake cable. I just kind of pull it as far down as I can. And then this one takes a little bit more time, patience. I just get a couple drops of lube in there and kind of let gravity do its thing. Then again, I'll like hold the loop or hold the noodle and work it a couple times, and I can still feel quite a bit of resistance, friction in there. So I'm adding a little bit of lube down here, lubing the noodle. Rated PG here, folks. Parental guidance is suggested. Ooh! I think maybe I can demonstrate here. So, you know, we shifted up into the big ring here and then clicked the small button on the shifter to loosen this cable, right? Which would have shifted it down, but we haven't pedaled yet. But once we pedal, it shifts back down into the little ring and that cable's tight now. Okay, so these brake pivots feel really good, but I just kind of drop a little bit of lube down in there, like yay. Try to get some back here and on the linear spring. And I'm kind of wiggling that back and forth vertically, I suppose. And that kind of allows that lube to seep down into the pivot. Again, just a couple drops on the linear spring. All that helps keep things fresh and new and clean and moving freely, friction free, and get some snappy, crispy braking going on. Rear brake, or front brake gives you a little different perspective on things. We don't have the advantages of gravity like we do on the rear, but we can still get lube in there. Okay, let's turn this thing back into a bicycle. That's easy to do. All you have to do is put wheels on it. I'm going to reconnect the brake here. Reach up to the lever and give it a couple of squeezes. Yeah, we're gonna need some adjustment there. One thing is this brake pad seems to be hitting the tire, like way off kilter. So I'm gonna loosen the skewer. Oh yeah, see the wheel was in crooked. I just loosened the skewer and pulled up on the wheel and the axle seated itself in the dropouts. It's the first thing I check when I see brakes acting funny. We can do a little bit of tweaking. I'm going to turn this tension screw in, and that'll increase the tension on this side, pulling the whole system over. So if you have a rubbing brake, first thing to check is make sure your wheel's in straight. And then the second thing is you can start adjusting the tension of your brake springs. And there's these linear springs, and you're just increasing tension on one side or decreasing on the other. I'm going to decrease it on this side a little bit. And we're just trying to find it so they hit at the exact same time. And I think we're there. I'm gonna add a little back over here. Okay, that's really good. I had the feeling that I was pulling a little more cable than I wanted, not by much. And just to show you, to tighten your brakes, this is the anchor screw, and you can loosen it and just pull a little bit of cable through and then tighten it back down. Tuck that out of the way. Oh, crispy, snappy. Way more better, hey. For the most part, I like to start in the back of the bike and move forward. We already did the rear brake, and here we are looking at the rear derailleur. Okay, noticing that things are sluggish. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you see that? It just kind of went up a little bit more than it wanted to on that shift, and that's making some noise. I think the cable tension is a little tight. But also what's happening here is the derailleur is pushing the chain more towards the big cogs. It's giving me the feeling that the cable's too tight. And actually, if I feel it, the cable does feel too tight, but not by much, just a smidge. And so we have this barrel adjuster here. Now the barrel adjuster, you know, we're used to lefty loosen and righty tighty as the rule of thumb. But if you're talking about cable tension, if you want to loosen the cable tension, then you turn the barrel adjuster in. But this barrel adjuster is in all the way. So I'm going to back it out a few turns. So this is a little more advanced. This isn't easy tuning, but you might learn something. So I back that out a little bit, okay, and then I loosen the anchor bolt, and now that cable's moving freely, and I'm just going to finger tight pull it and then retighten the anchor. And this should give me enough wiggle room with this barrel adjuster that I'll be able to dial this in, and it'll be smooth as silk when we're done. However, before we do all of that, this is filthy, and so is the chain. So this is a slightly dirtier rag, and I haven't even sprayed anything on this yet. Don't really need to, but you totally could. And I've got a product that I think is the best to use for tune-ups, and that's this Finish Line One Step. If you're a DIY, kind of recreational, casual cyclist, this is really all you need for any of this stuff. I just spray the chain like that. But then I take an even dirtier rag. I always have my rags are like different grades of filth. Grades of filth. That'll be my band name. Also, this tool is called a nipple driver, which actually would be my band name. Anyway, you can spray the One Step on and then wipe it off. I mean, that drivetrain right there is good enough for who it's for. I mean, that's the epitome of good enough for who it's for. Then if you're really crazy, yeah, let's go crazy. You just spray One Step on your derailleur, get it all over your rag. This is like a polish, really fantastic. Then I'm going back to my semi-clean rag. And you know, my grandmother, she used to eat a lot of prunes. You know, did your grandma eat a lot of prunes? My grandma ate a lot of prunes. She spent a lot of time in the bathroom, and she would sing a little song. And it went, wiping as you go, wiping as you go. When you eat like I do, we're wiping as you go. I'm just kidding. She never sang that song. I just made that up. But I do kind of always have a cleaning rag. And this is the one that we used on those not very dirty wheels. So it's still got a little bit of the Behold furniture polish on it. Look at all that One Step I sprayed all over the rim. Oh my goodness, this bike will never stop, ever. Holy cow, you got One Step on your rim, on the braking surface, and you're using that dirty rag to wipe the perfectly machined sidewall on these rims. My God, what kind of hack mechanic are you? Bike Farmer's School of Half-Acidness. It's fine, folks, get over it. Okay, so now everything's cleaned and lubed. Well, not the front derailleur. Actually, hold on. Okay, so the drivetrain's cleaned and lubed. When the bikes sit, the shifters tend to gum up a little bit. Best thing you can do for your bike is ride it every once in a while. You know, it's like a car. They don't like to sit. Okay, so we squirt some One Step in the shifter pods, get them all cleaned up like EA. And you kind of work through it. You can usually find a nook or a cranny. Get the needle from your lube in there. We just kind of flush the system. If it's really bad and things like aren't clicking at all because your bike has been sitting in a barn for 4 years, then you can hit it with degreaser and really flush it out. I've heard of people taking them off and soaking them and ultrasonic cleaners. There's always ways to wake up shifters. So I'm just kind of shifting through everything here just to kind of get a feel for the bike overall. But what I try to do is I start in the middle chainring in the front. So this is a 3x8 drivetrain. In the middle chainring, I start in this extreme, and then I look here to see if the chain's rubbing, and it is not. Then I go down to the high gear, which is the little one, and look, and it's rubbing just a little bit. And actually it's rubbing just a little bit. So in both extremes, it's just barely touching, which means that it's set up as good as it can be. A little hand tightening of the cable, I think I nailed it on the first try. But if you needed to make some micro adjustments, that's what your barrel adjuster is for. So if you want the chain to shift a little more up the cassette, then you turn this lefty-loosey, which pulls the barrel adjuster out, which lengthens this piece of housing, which tightens the cable. It tightens the whole system. So it's forcing the derailleur to push the chain a little bit more that way. Or if it's overshifting and you want to loosen it, you go righty-tighty, which pulls this barrel adjuster in, which shortens the housing, which creates a little more slack in the cable. But I'm not touching it because it's perfect. And we could go over limit screws here. They're high and low limit screws on every derailleur. This is the high gear, so it would be the one that has an H on it, and it limits how far the derailleur will pull the chain this way. The low limit will limit how much it pushes it towards your spokes. Now, this is a point of contention for many people. It's called a spoke protector. A lot of people call it a dork disc, and they don't like it because they turn yellow and they get brittle and they're ugly, and I don't know, I don't understand. But what happens is, inevitably in a bike rack or putting it in and out of a car, or some kid knocks it over or whatever, but this bike is gonna tip over and this derailleur is gonna get bashed and the hanger is gonna bend, and it's gonna cause the derailleur to wanna overshift into the spokes. Well, this plastic thing protects the chain from ripping all the spokes off this side of the bike. Now, it doesn't really ever rip the spokes off the side of the bike, but it does cause damage, and a lot of times things get jammed up and you got to go to the bike shop and it's a real pain in the ass. So if you leave your spoke protector on there, it prevents a lot of that stuff from happening. And then in the comments, everybody says, well, if you just set your limit screws properly, you can prevent it. You know, you just got to tune your bike up. What are you, some sort of hack mechanic? You don't know what you're doing. You're such an idiot. And that's not so true, because it's all about this getting bashed, and like your limit screws don't matter if the derailleur hanger bends. All said, the way you check is when you're up in this gear. So you're in your lowest gear, which is the biggest cog. Right now I'm pushing on the shift lever, trying to get this derailleur to move even more, and it's not moving. If I were to back off the low limit screw, you'd see this derailleur moving, right? So it's perfectly adjusted. I ain't touching it. It's indexing swimmingly. Now in the front, it's the same sort of deal. You got high and low limits. You can limit how far the derailleur moves. And again, this is perfect. I don't need to adjust any cable tension or anything on this bike. But if I did, I would use the barrel adjuster up on the shifter. This is a really common thing that I see on a lot of linear pull brakes. So what happens is people are putting these bikes in and out of their cars, or it tips over and the handlebars spin around like this, and it pulls on that cable, and it pulls the noodle right through the little brake stop thing. And that's, you see this little corner's bent, and this is kind of splayed out a little bit. So I like to grab my needle nose and give it a bend back and a squeeze and kind of reshape that. And then that will hold it right in place as designed. And that's all we're doing here, is trying to get these bikes back to operate and function as designed. And they were designed in a clean, lubricated environment. So that's why we clean and lubricate before we adjust. But that'll help, you know, keep things normal. And that brake is borderline awful. Okay, but again, it's pulling only from one side. And the very first thing I always check is the wheel in straight? Okay, I'm pulling straight up with this hand, and I got the skewer loosened. As I'm pulling straight up, I'm tightening the skewer back down. Okay, so we've got some adjusting to do. Okay, I'm going to add a little tension to this side. And that was a little too much. Man, it sure is nice to adjust these brakes when everything's cleaned and lubed. Oh man, that's really good. So a lot of times with front brakes, and I can feel it, there's a spring up here in the noodle. And so the brakes are making contact there, but then you can squeeze a whole lot more lever. And that's kind of like an anti-lock sort of system that they do, because here, I get the lever in the shot here. So people panic stop and just squeeze as hard as they can. And they're just like, ah, die, right? Which you can still definitely flip over the handlebars on this bike. If you just have like a moderate squeeze, then it just slows you down. It doesn't stop. It's harder to lock them up because the spring will fight back a little bit for people that aren't panicking. And I'm hearing a slight squeak that I'm guessing is here or here. It's gone. I win again. Okay, so I'm squeezing as hard as I can here and really stretching that cable out, because I don't think anybody ever really has stretched the cable out, and it's way too loose. So we're gonna loosen that up, loosen up our anchor bolt a little bit. That's squeezed all the way tight. I'm gonna back it off just a smidge. See how that feels. Okay, that feels a little tight. Oh, and I just pulled. So I didn't really crank down on the anchor bolt, so then I could squeeze on the lever and pull it through just like a millimeter. And I think I got her just exactly perfect. Man, does that feel good. That is snappy, crispy. That is a good feeling brake. We really like that. That is satisfying. Okay. See that wobble? Bloop, bloop. That tells me that this bike has been sitting, you know, on its tire right around in here. Let's put air in the tires, see how round they get. Hey, let's talk about this new tool quick. I got this from Efficient Velo Tool. It is their inflator. It's the fanciest one on the market. It's very fancy. It's got a really nice gauge. It's got this amazing chuck that kind of locks onto the valves. It's got the world's greatest press to valve adapter. And then you can just add as you go. It's showing 80 pounds, 80 PSI in my system right now, which I think I have my compressor set at 100. It's early in the morning, and it charges up every day at 9 o'clock. Usually I just make tires firm on all my tune-ups. I'm like, just make your tires firm. Tire pressure is a personal preference, and if you want to pay attention to it and lock in what your favorite tire pressure is for the kind of riding you do, that's great. But if you just want to go for a bike ride, just make your tires firm and go for a bike ride. It's fine. Just don't ride with squishy tires. By the books, about 70, 75 pounds, anywhere between 60 and 80 is good enough for who it's for. Well, I've got just enough air in my compressor to fill these tires. Life is good. This inflator is amazing, I'm telling you. I've wanted one for a very long time, and I finally got one, and I'm gonna talk about it a lot in my videos now. I think it's worth it. If you're doing a lot of bike tune-ups, it's worth it. But you know, you're probably not doing a lot of bike tune-ups. You're probably just tuning up your bike once a year. And it's that easy. Cleaning, lubing, adjusting. Most of the time, especially when you have a decent bike like this one, like I said, it doesn't get much easier than this. Most of the time, once you get things set, you won't have to do a whole lot of adjusting. The brake springs will often drift just a little bit. Same thing with like spoke tension will kind of change just a little bit. Cable stretch, housing compresses, that sort of thing. So little things do change on the bike, so you can always make a little bit of improvement. It's just not always that complicated. Sometimes it's just cleaning and lubing and just maybe a tweak here and there. And that I really firmly believe that anybody can be doing at home. So I hope I made that look super simple and easy. I think that whole tune-up, we only used like 2 tools maybe, a Phillips head screwdriver and a 5mm Allen key and a bottle of lube. That's about it. It's really pretty simple. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. If you made it this far, that's probably the most rewarding concept in this whole YouTube experience in my life. I can't believe that people watch my videos all the way through. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I assume if you watched it all the way through, you liked it. So please give it a like, subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna be making more videos just like this one. If you really like it and got some value out of it, I'd like to be paid for it. And the easiest way is you can click a super thanks and send me $5. That means I can go get a taco, feed myself, sustenance, more videos. Or if you don't wanna think about it, you can just become a sustaining member right here in YouTube. It works like Patreon, but you can just become a member, set your bank account up, $5, $10 a month. The sustaining memberships is how I'm gonna build this channel. That's how I'm gonna build my future. That's how I'm gonna make more content. That's how you're gonna learn more. Sustaining memberships are where it's at. But for yourself, the #1 thing you can do is click that notification bell so you and your bike can stay tuned.